When a horrific murder takes place, particularly in a close-knit community, the impact is felt for decades to come. But, as well as the pain felt by the victim's family, there is also the physical legacy of their houses and gardens which are linked to these heinous crimes. More often than not, houses connected to notorious killings are demolished in a bid to destroy the memories which will forever be associated with that site. The practice is largely to stop ghoulish souvenir hunters plundering the house and gardens for relics of the notorious crimes. But there is also the reality that most people just do not want to live in a house with such sinister connotations. And in today's video we look at 7 more infamous and disturbing serial killer locations. 1165 3rd Street, Monterey, United States. A rather unknown case, suspected serial killer Alfred Powell has thus far only been convicted of 2 early 1980s murder, but he has been linked to several more. Powell's first sentenced to 15 years to life for the murder of Suzanne Nixon in 1983, but later admitted to the additional killing of Sandra Stephan. The 32-year-old mother of 3 was considered missing for more than 3 decades before her body was found in 2015 when a landscaper dug up Powell's yard and found her remains. He was later convicted of this second murder while still in jail, being given another sentence of 15 years to life. The house where he lived and the yard where he buried 2 of his victims have since been purchased and are still standing to this day. However, the current owners claim to have had no prior knowledge of the house's grisly past when they bought it. They later decided to sue the real estate for not disclosing this information up front. And Powell is currently serving his sentence at a Salina State Prison in Vacaville and has no set date for release. Homefield Court, 102 to 106 Thornton Road, Bradford, UK. Stephen Griffiths, a serial killer from the UK, is well known for murdering 3 women in 2009 and 2010. Suzanne Balmiris, 36, Shelley Armitage, 31, and Susan Rushworth, 43. However, after his now infamous crimes, he is well known by another name, the Crossbow Cannibal. In 2009, he invited Susan Rushworth, a sex worker from the area, back to his apartment. He then shot Rushworth with a crossbow, killing her before dismembering her body in the bathtub. The next year, he would do the very same thing to his second victim, Shelley Armitage. It is believed that he would keep parts of his victims' bodies to eat later on, sometimes cooking them, but other times eating them raw. The parts of the bodies that he didn't eat were put into garbage bags and tossed into a nearby lake. The third and final murder of Suzanne Balmiris was a little bit different. Griffiths held Balmiris hostage in his apartment for 2 days. However, she was eventually able to break free from bondage, at which point she opened the door to the apartment and ran down the hall. Unfortunately, Griffiths chased her into the hallway, crossbow in hand, and shot her as she tried to escape. However, as Griffiths turned around, he noticed a CCTV camera that had captured the entire incident. He casually walked past the camera and flipped his middle finger in a manner that seems almost boastful of the crime he's just committed. He then gave Susan Balmiris the same treatment he gave the others, eating parts of her body and dumping the rest in the nearby lake. In December 2010, Griffiths was convicted of all 3 murders and sentenced to life imprisonment, receiving a whole life order, which means he has no chance of getting out. He is incarcerated at Her Majesty's Prison Long Larton in Worcestershire. The location of his now infamous crimes in the Homefield Court flats in Bradford are still standing to this day and is actually being rented out as we speak. The flat, however, has received extensive works following Griffiths' crimes, with the kitchen, bathroom and all of the flooring being fully replaced. Charles Manson Ranch and Murder Sites. Get some popcorn for this one, as this is going to be a long one. The Spain Movie Ranch, built and owned by George Spain, was the film set of several westerns, including A Jewel in the Sun and episodes of Bonanza and Zorro. However, it was also the lair of Charles Manson and his notorious family. Charles Manson, of course known as the leader of the Manson family, and is responsible for the deaths of at least 9 people. Manson and his followers lived in the ranch's buildings and paid rent in the form of labour, not money. This is where they hatched their plans for their now infamous helter-skelter murders, which we will get to shortly. The buildings on the property burned down in a wildfire in September 1970 and were never rebuilt. The land now belongs to the state of California and is a part of the Santa Susana Pass State Historic Park, which is open to the public. Of course, this is not the only place with deep associations to Manson and his so-called family. The locations of their 2 most infamous crimes, one of which is visited by thousands of people a year on tours around Los Angeles, and will always be a part of this city's darker history. On the night of August the 8th, 4 members of the Manson family, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel and Linda Kasabian, drove from Spain Ranch to 10050 Celio Drive in Benedict Canyon, the now famous home of Sharon Tate and her husband, film director Roman Polanski. The group brutally murdered Tate, who at the time was 8.5 months pregnant, along with Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and Wishtek Frokowski and Susan Perront. All the bodies were discovered the next morning by Tate's housekeeper, when Kriskowski's body being discovered on the drive with over 50 stab wounds. The house itself was later demolished in 1994, and a new home was built on the land, and the address has also been changed to remove any associations with the murders. The current owner of the property has stated many times that there is absolutely nothing left from the days of the crimes, as everything was removed, even the dirt, when the new house was constructed. After considering various options for additional murders, Kasabian drove the group to 3301 Waverly Drive in the Los Feliz neighborhood, the home of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. Manson left with Atkins, Grogan and Kasabian, where Watson, Krenwinkel and Van Houten proceeded to kill the couple in the early morning hours of August the 10th. The house, as previously stated, is a popular location on dark history tours around Los Angeles. The house was last sold in 2019 for just under $2 million and looks exactly the same as it did on that terrible night. The Farmhouse, Harriman Drive, Goshan, New York. Nathaniel White is an African-American serial killer active in the Hudson Valley region of New York during the early 1990s. The first killing took place on March 25, 1991, after White had been convicted of abducting a 16-year-old girl, but before he started his prison sentence for the crime. In a plea bargain that would later be heavily criticised, White had pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor for the abduction and would therefore be eligible for parole after serving just 1 year in jail. White was paroled in April 1992 and returned to Orange County, New York. White admitted to the deaths of 6 women, and the bodies of 2 of them were found on his Goshan, New York property in the early 1990s. One of the girls he stabbed to death was his girlfriend's niece at the end of June, with the other 5 killings taking place in July of that same year. It's clear White lived in the farmhouse at the time of the murders, as he disposed of his victims there, making it known as the Farmhouse of Horrors. The house used as a body dumping ground by White was left abandoned until July 2015, when the house was destroyed in a fire, the cause of which was never determined. White is now serving a sentence of 150 years at Elmira Maximum Security Correctional Facility, meaning that he will never be released. 2020 Lamar Drive, Pasadena, California. Dean Arnold Cole was an American serial killer and pederast who abducted, tortured and murdered a minimum of 28 teenage boys and young men between 1970 and 1973 in Houston, Texas and Pasadena, California. He was aided by his two teenage accomplices, David Owen Brooks and Elmer Wayne Henley. These killings are considered the worst example of serial murder in US history. Cole would also go on to a probably more familiar name due to his family ownership of a candy factory, the Candyman Killer. Cole would take his victims from Houston Heights, a low-income housing area in the city of Houston. This would be by the promise of a party or lift, or otherwise by sheer force. At Cole's residence, the youths would be plied with alcohol and other drugs until they passed out, tricked into donning handcuffs, or simply grabbed by force. They were then stripped and tied to either Cole's bed or usually a plywood torture board which was regularly hung on a wall. The victims would then be sexually assaulted, beaten, tortured and sometimes after several days killed by strangulation or shooting with a .22 caliber pistol. Their bodies were then tied in plastic sheeting and buried in one of four places: a rented boat shed in southwest Houston, a beach on the Bolivar Peninsula, a woodland near Lake San Raben, where Cole's family owned a lakeside log cabin, or a beach in Jefferson County. However, this would come to a grisly end at Cole's last residence at 2020 Lamar Drive in Pasadena, California. This was the last home of the serial killer, where at least 6 teenage boys were tortured and murdered. Cole himself was shot here by his accomplice Elmer Henley on August 8, 1973, after Henley had brought home a young girl to Cole's next victim. Upon finding the girl, Cole tied up all 3 teenagers and threatened to kill them all. After Henley promised to help with the torture of the young girl, he grabbed a nearby pistol and shot Cole 3 times before he died in the house. There is a photograph available of the crime scenes themselves, but of course I cannot show these on YouTube without risk of this video being taken down. But be aware, they are out there. The house which the torture and murder took place still stands to this day. However, as per the usual, it has received heavy modernisation since the infamous killings. World's Fair Hotel, West 63rd Street, Chicago. The World's Fair Hotel was later known as Murder Castle because of the incredible number of homicides carried out there by its owner at the time. Built to cash in on the increase in tourism created by the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, it was owned and run by one Herman Webster Mudgett, also known as Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, or most infamously H.H. Holmes. Hanged in 1896 for the murder of his business partner Benjamin Petzel, Holmes confessed to 26 more killings. The reality is that the con artist and cold-blooded killer slowly slew many more men and women, all for financial gain. His kill count could tip a shocking 200 victims. The murder hotel had some 100 rooms, yet this was no ordinary boarding house. Built to spec for Holmes' murderous pursuits, it was, according to the press of the time, customised specifically for a devious serial killer. The hotel was said to have many strange features, such as stairs that led to nowhere, basement stoves big enough to fit humans, rooms that lock from the outside, multiple trapdoors, chutes that go directly to the basement, soundproof rooms, acid vats, gas chambers and torture rooms. How much was sensationalist journalism and how much is true is hard to say. In 1895, a suspicious fire saw the entire place burn to the ground. 21859 32nd Place South, Seatac, Washington, United States. Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer, lived in a small green house near the Seattle-Tacoma area in Washington State. He murdered upwards of 49 women, although many claim he killed upwards of 71 women while living in this now infamous house, and a few of his other victims were killed in the nearby areas. The home was torn apart by police as they searched for clues that connected Ridgway to the murders he committed. He would mainly kill women, weigh them down with rocks, and then dump their bodies in the Green River. On November the 30th, 2001, as Ridgway was leaving the Kenworth truck factory where he worked in Renton, Washington, he was arrested for the murders of 4 women whose cases were linked to him through DNA profiling, after which the true extent of his killing spree was finally revealed. He is now serving life without parole at Washington State Penitentiary, Walla Walla, Washington. The infamous home has since been completely renovated and modernized, and was actually sold to its current owner while Ridgway was still carrying out his crimes. The house, to this day, still stands. That's the video, everyone. So I hope you've enjoyed going over the more darker aspects of our world. Don't forget to punch the like button, leave a comment down below, and of course subscribe if you're new to the channel. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, which are always down below. And last thing to say, this has been Stargazer Entertainment, and I shall see you in the next video.